Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or afternoon or morning, based on where you're watching us from. My name is David Swinson, and sharing the screen with me is Austin Hale. We are the co founders of Financial Foundations of Virginia. Welcome to our first Town Hall Ask the Experts event. The reason we're all here tonight, trying to expand the reach of how we are providing services to the community, trying to do some live events to give people access to ask questions, get those questions answered. I can see viewers starting to trickle in. We had solicited some early questions to have people try to let us get a head start on what they may want to know. And one of the most common things, Austin, was how did Financial Foundations of Virginia come to be? And I guess more importantly, why does it need to be? And since ultimately this was originally your baby, I'm kind of going to kick that one to you.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so I guess originally it started as a business idea um, because I guess I kind of felt that real estate closers and stuff were taking advantage of people by charging way too much for commissions and doing way too little work. And it turned out in my conversations with Dave that it wasn't just in the real estate business, it was kind of everywhere that we felt that consumers were not necessarily being taken advantage of. I don't know if that's really the most accurate way to put it. But we felt that there was a knowledge gap between basically when consumers try to go and purchase things. A lot of times they weren't getting the best rates. They didn't really understand it. They don't know about co-signing. The fact that when I was talking with Dave, a lot of what you learn about personal finance kind of comes from your parents, and if your parents don't teach you about it, you kind of end up going through the school of hard knocks, and you're forced to learn about it when you're in a bad financial situation. So that's kind of where the idea came from. Dave and myself, we both have backgrounds in the consumer finance space. For me, over 10 years, Dave probably 20 or more. Um, and why does it need to exist? I think it needs to exist because financial literacy, if you look at it as a whole in the United States, our financial literacy rate is hovering around 49, 50% at best. And that's just not acceptable. So we're just trying to do the best we can to, spread a little bit of knowledge out there and help some people so they don't have to go through that school of hard knocks.
Yeah, I think one of the updates that recently got added to our website, the 2024 numbers were what, 48% financial
Yeah,
literacy,
40. Yep.
which was up
Hmm.
2% compared to last year.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I think the huge, huge divide in what people think they know and what they actually know, especially when it comes to this topic. Um, I know I'll raise my hand and say guilty as a parent. I was giving you a little bit of grief about having young kids. I don't have young kids anymore. I've got grown kids, but definitely fell into the parental category of they'll figure it out like I figured it out. Didn't necessarily provide the groundwork, sit down and have those kind of conversations. Hindsight, probably not the greatest parenting decision that I've made, but I just know even me growing up, I don't remember having financial discussions with my parents. Um, the excuse me, sorry about that. Back in March, the CEO of a firm had posted for Financial Literacy Month that most people learn about finance when they have the S word moment, right? It's not taught in school. If it is, it's minimal at best. Parents don't think to teach it because they probably don't know it. So you don't bother to learn it until you have to figure it out, and that usually comes from when something went wrong. Um, so yeah, I think why we're here is to help fill that gap and do it in a way that makes sense, right? We'll pull the curtain back. You're a lawyer. You're a smart guy. You speak in words and use things like Oxford commas that the average person probably doesn't understand.
Mm.
But you and your
Secured transactions.
right, you and your lawyer buddies definitely know how to speak that language. I think when it pertains to topics like credit or investing, it's usually information presented by people who went to school for accounting or are investment bankers. They speak in terms that other investment bankers or other accountants would understand. They don't speak in terms of what the everyman would understand. So even if you go out and you try to find information on these topics, it's not easily digestible. And that's one of the things you and I talked about in the very early days. How do we take complicated subject matter and make it so anybody could understand it?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're trying to do. And one of the ways that we're doing that right now is through blog posts, believe it or not. Just trying to pump out some blog post content. We've got a few that are on how to build credit. That's one of the most viewed ones right now. We get a lot of hits on, because if you don't have credit, if you don't know where to start, having a blog such as that one that we're running right now might be something that you would want to look at.
Yeah, so we're up to what, close to 50 different blog posts on there.
Yeah, it's about 50, covering a lot of different topics. So not just credit, but things related to house buying, taxes, um, secured transactions.
So for anybody watching that hasn't been to the site yet, it's financialfoundationsofvirginia.org. Outside of the blog posts, there are also links to other free resources, either in the legal field or different government resources. One of the things, Austin, I know you're real proud of right now is the first of our free courses that's going to be hopefully going live here shortly.
Yeah, hopefully it's a 6-chapter course with about 3 lessons per chapter. So hopefully that goes live in the next couple weeks, just kind of covering the basics of everything.
All right. So it
Yeah.
looks like we had a question that we kind of answered right there. How is Financial Foundations of Virginia helping people? And right now, it is very much a digital footprint, right?
Hmm.
Trying to build out a free resource pool.
Yeah, and I think to go with that, one of the things that we uploaded recently was the free general durable power of attorney. So that's something that if you go to an attorney to get it done, it's going to cost you a few $100. But you can just go to our site and grab a template to kind of use and guide you. Always seek legal advice and everything like that. But it's something that could get you started in the right direction.
And you also added a free advance directive, also, correct?
I did, yeah, free advanced medical directive to cover those situations where your healthcare needs basically.
So I'm sure there are people going, okay, what does a general power of attorney and a advance directive have to do with a financial literacy charity? And I think that they're directly tied in our minds, but maybe easier to communicate is indirectly tied to the person that's listening, right? That what and again, do your disclaimer of always seek out from a professional legal advice. Even though you are a professional, you're not functioning as a lawyer in this capacity and you can't give legal advice in this forum. The general power of attorney, you have to be, there are times where you're going to assign the ability to someone else to act on your behalf, and that may
Hmm.
be with a general power of attorney, it's to do it in all things, right? So there is still a tie back to financial literacy, and it is a document that is needed by a lot of people, and because there is this tie to what we do,
Hmm.
making it available was important to you to have it out there.
Yeah, and not just making it available, but having people actually utilize it because a lot of times, what you'll see, at least in the legal profession, is somebody needs a general durable power of attorney before it's too late, right? So you have somebody, let's say, that's getting older, they've become incapacitated, they have all these financial assets, and you can't touch any of them because you don't have that power of attorney. So that's one of the reasons why you would want to probably get one. Um,
All right. Yeah, so I think one of the other things is events like this, right? That is there an appetite out there for the people that are going to the site? And we do know people are going to the site, right? The site has been up for a little over a year, and I think
Yeah.
we should this month cross 3,000 unique visitors to the site.
Yep.
So we know people are going. They're going to the blog posts. Uh, they're looking at the resources we're making available. Layering in something like this, which again, still a digital footprint given our age and our size, easier for you and I to get into a meet and go live on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever it is that we can and try to run an event that provides access to us, but we don't have to worry about the logistics of a physical building, trying to pay for meeting space, things like that, but it's still giving people the ability to come and kind of access us. So those are the ways right now I think that we're helping. There's also been partnerships, right? We very early on were blessed, I guess would be a good word, to have a meeting and get a partnership with the United Way of the Peninsula. Uh, Always good to have a existing organization see value in what we were bringing to the table and allow us to use their logo and reference them and them do the same for us. Uh, I think how we're helping right now is still part of it, figuring out how we can help. And feedback from the community, people that are watching this or see our page or go to the website, providing us any kind of feedback to let us know what you're looking for in help would be a great thing. So there's a question from us to you guys, is if you could please give us some kind of feedback. What are you looking for? What would you like to see out there? How can we service you? Let's
Yeah.
see.
So I guess jumping into, I guess a little bit more of the meat of it, we've kind of covered how we've gotten to this point. Dave, do you want to maybe give like an overview of credit? I think that's probably been one of our most asked about and covered topics.
Yeah, so I guess let's kind of dissect that. People use the term credit, and I think you're referencing personal credit, right? In that
Right.
particular case, uh, and credit's kind of a broad brush term, right? What's my personal credit? What's business credit? What is somebody extending me credit? In this case, we're talking about personal credit, credit score. Um, so here's the Dave a person answer. Your credit score is an arbitrary number calculated by one of the three major credit reporting agencies to communicate your value to lenders. And I call it an arbitrary score because it's proprietary math owned by the individual reporting agency that they will never communicate to you how they arrive at the number. But that number equals your worthiness to a lender. And right, wrong, or indifferent, regardless of my personal beliefs on how that number is arrived at, it is the number that people utilize to determine how much or how long somebody will lend you money, how much they're going to charge you for the privilege of using their money. Uh, we talk about a long day. I actually had new hire class today at your current employer, my previous employer. Um, and it was interesting. I was doing the you don't really know what you think you know portion of the class. And when I asked about the credit score, when I told him, no, each bureau has their own credit calculation and they all have multiple scores, he went, wait, there's not one credit. I don't have a credit score. There's not like a government central credit score.
Yeah.
And he's a younger guy, right? He's mid-20s. No, there's not a singular government regulated, your credit score is this, right? It's what do Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion, based on the information they have, report as your score. Yes, there's
Mhm.
government oversight into what they can include in that calculation, but how it's calculated, it's on them.
Yep.
And they have multiple different scoring models, right? Equifax has 5 different scoring models. I think most people now, and I don't want to dog it, but you ask, especially young people, and I say that to a young guy sitting on the other side of the speed. Their point of reference for their credit score is Credit Karma, and Credit Karma is a tool provided by one, I think it's TransUnion that backs Credit Karma.
Think so.
Um,
Yeah.
but even that isn't a one-to-one relationship with TransUnion's primary score. It's still an estimation of what your credit score should be based on the information it has.
Right.
So yes, if you use Credit Karma, you're watching this and you use Credit Karma, it's a great tool to give you awareness of the range in which your credit score is probably falling. It is not your credit score.
Hmm.
And the knowing about your credit score is important in the context of understanding what you should receive in terms of an approval from a bank or an interest rate on a credit card, any of that, but it's not a guarantee because you have an idea of what your number is that you're going to be able to forecast what the approval dollar amount is going to be, or what the interest rate that they're going to extend you is going to be, or what the term is going to be, or if they're even going to approve you at all, because more goes into underwriting than just the score, right? There's an income to debt ratio workup. How much money do you have coming in versus what you have going out? Um, you have companies that use subjective credit approval, not modeled, where a computer just looks at your information and spits out, but you actually have human underwriters that'll look at it, and they'll look at trade line by trade line. And when I say trade line, the different reporting lines. So if you
Hmm.
have a car finance through Capital One and you have a credit card through Citibank, those are 2 individual trade lines, and they'll do trade line evaluations. And it there's not as much emphasis on the score as there is the components of your actual credit, right? How long have you had an account?
Hmm.
What's the pay history on that account?
How would somebody go and try to pull their actual credit report? We've talked about credit score, but how do you get your credit report?
So annually, you can request a free from each of the bureaus, and I think there are a couple different websites. I know you can go to what
So the
is
main one is annualcreditreport.com.
yep, and then there is the
That's mhm.
mycreditreportcard.com will give you one, and you can go directly to all 3 bureaus also.
Mhm.
Highly encourage anybody who hasn't take advantage of that. Again, it's free. You get a free one every year, and at bare minimum, just to know what's on your credit report.
Yeah, and make sure you dispute anything that doesn't align with what you feel that you have. You know, if you see something on there from Capital One and you've never had a Capital One account, then that's something that you would probably want to look into and dispute because it's bringing down your credit score most likely.
Yeah, most people don't steal identity and then make payments. Although that'd be great
Right.
if I could find somebody to do that. Just um, so what's other good information that somebody might find if they requested a copy of their credit report?
I mean, yeah, like you said, the length of their accounts. One of the things, one of the ways to actually raise your credit score is if your parent has a good credit history and they make you an authorized user on their credit card. Basically, what you'll see is you gain the benefit of their entire credit history. So if you have a parent that has an 800 credit score, they make you an authorized user at 18. Guess what? Now you have an 800 credit score. So there's little tips and tricks that kind of go along as you start to learn more about it, that can kind of help you financially. Obviously, a higher score, you'll get better rates and better terms, if you choose to finance something. So that's just something that you would want to keep in mind.
Why? So I think what I just posed it from the standpoint of what you would get approved for in a dollar amount or the interest rate that you would pay. There's other impacts based on credit score that are out there, and there's a there's a whole generation, and when I say generation, I'm clearly a Gen Xer, you're a millennial, right? Your generation makes up the largest percentage of dollars in the marketplace right now. So you are the consumer, you and your generation. And generally, your generation has a negative perception to credit, right? All studies, all marketplace behavior says millennials not big fans of credit. And we could go into the reasons for that, but that's really not the topic. I think the point I want to make is that credit impacts more than just dollars in the marketplace. That whether again go to set aside personal feelings of how that number is arrived at or what its real value is, you have to have credit, especially in America, because America has a completely different viewpoint toward credit than the rest of the world, right? We are much freer. We leverage credit to make purchases more than the rest of the world does. Credit score has for a larger reach here than it does the rest of the world. Um, so regardless of whether or not you have a generation of people that believe credit is a good thing or a bad thing, the fact is that it is a part of life in America, and it impacts more than just how much you're going to pay for something. That you want to get an apartment, they're gonna check your credit. You need to turn utilities on in that apartment, they're going to check your credit. There are certain jobs in this country
Mm-hmm.
that, and pick one that most people I don't necessarily know or would draw the correlation. You want to go work in a bank and be a bank teller, they're going to check your credit. Because again, right, wrong, or indifferent, if that number is too low, they believe you are potentially going to steal money from them. So they don't want to give you access to that money, right? If you're in the military and you want to get a certain security clearance, your credit impacts your ability to do that. So aside from the viewpoint of, oh, I'm just not going to buy stuff, I don't believe in credit, that's great. And more power to you if you can live your life like a one percenter and be cash flush and make every purchase that you ever want to with cash. You're still going to need credit and need to be mindful of credit if you ever want to own a home or get the job that you really want. And I don't think people completely understand the impact that their credit score has on their overall life. So we kind of touched on how people can improve their credit. We talked about checking their credit, and I want to back up and talk about asking for your credit report does not hurt your credit.
That's right.
Right? So you asking for it is still an inquiry, just like if me as a lender were to ask for it. But the difference is when you ask for it, it's what they call a soft inquiry versus me, the lender, asking for it as a hard inquiry. So you asking has no impact to your credit score whatsoever. And and I guess if we're on inquiries for a minute, a lot of people think that having your credit pulled because it's an inquiry hurts your credit. And the real answer is yes, there is an impact to your credit if someone is if a lender, a whether that be a bank to buy a car or a credit card company looking to issue you a credit line, points are deducted from your score for an inquiry, somewhere between 3 and 5, right? Based on which credit bureau it is, it's 3 to 5 points. It is negligible to your credit score. If you are one of the people out there that believes I can't have my credit run because inquiries are going to destroy my credit, It's not. It is a minimal. That does not mean go out and apply for credit for everything, because 3 to 5 per inquiry could compound and hurt you. But inquiries on their own do not hurt your credit score. Um, so it looks like there was a question on savings, and I know that is something that you are a big proponent of. So, how can someone optimize a savings plan, Austin?
Well, I think number one, you got to take advantage if if you're working for an employer and they offer some sort of 401k matching or something to that effect. That's free money. So at least put in enough to where you can get that match. Prior to that, if you're on like a high deductible health plan, even before you would want to put stuff in a 401k, you'd probably want to invest money into a health savings account, because you end up getting a triple tax savings on that. The money's tax deductible, it grows tax free, and you can withdraw it without penalty. So that's probably one of the best investment vehicles that there really is. And then I guess also the concept of paying yourself first. And I don't know that everybody really understands what that is. So basically, whenever your paycheck comes in, out of that paycheck, you take a certain percentage, 5, 10%, 15%, and that money just automatically goes to either a savings account or an investment account. Um, so once it's kind of hard to get started doing it if you're used to, a certain income coming in. But once you do get started, the money kind of just funnels into these accounts, and it gets easier. So what I think one of the ways that probably I would recommend doing it is whenever you get your annual raise each year, just funnel that money into your paying yourself account.
So there's what's it, the 70/20/10? Is that the program that seems to be the one that gets promoted the most, right? The
Yeah,
10% toward savings, 20% toward the stuff that you want to do, and the 70% to the stuff that you
towards the
need to
needs.
do.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's probably a pretty easy formula to follow. I don't know that. I guess if you start early enough, 70/20/10 will probably set you on your way. And we don't do a good job of saving anyway, right? The Fed released a study: 80% of Americans, if faced with an emergency expense of $600 or more, couldn't afford it.
Hmm.
So, what is that in common terms? It means that 80% of Americans don't have $600 in their savings account,
Yep.
right? We're an immediate gratification society. We do not save well. Uh, so if I guess starting with a number like 10% and putting that in the bank at least gets you on the road to that. I don't know that 70/20/10 at this point in my life would get me a savings account worth anything. uh, but the numbers make sense, right? 70% of what you make goes toward paying for your car, paying for your gas, paying for your house. 20% to go and just have a good time with, setting aside 10. I think if I were giving advice to somebody, I'd probably flip the 20 and 10 number if you were looking for long-term success with that,
Hmm.
but probably easier to swallow, especially for us as a society, that the smaller number is going to save for a rainy day, and the 20% is going to have a good time.
Yeah. I think one of the maybe unspoken things about, that stat that you just mentioned with this, not being able to afford a $600 expense is kind of the interconnectedness of financial health and then mental health. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think you did a blog on that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I did.
And
Um,
I thought we may have turned part of that into a video at one point, but I and I'm probably going to misquote it, but I think you would one of the stats in there had something to do with the it referenced the fact most arguments in a marriage revolve around money. Most people worry about money more than anything else.
more than
So
anything.
when
Hmm.
you're drawing that connection between financial health and mental health, right? The stresses that we tend to focus on money, right? The burden, but the weight of bills, the weight of an unexpected expense, and what that can do to your stress levels which we know increase stress, especially if you don't deal with stress well, what that does to somebody's mental and emotional well-being. But I think the fact that, again, most arguments in a marriage around money, right? We know marriages in America end in divorce 50% of the time, and if the majority of arguments within a marriage are about money, then the correlation is most divorces occur because of money, right? If you just draw that line and go, if that's what you fight about the most, and 50% of divorces, marriages end in a divorce, then people are getting divorced because they can't come to terms on finances, either the stresses associated with finances or something of that nature. Um,
Yeah, and I mean there is a weight of, I think you said it when we were talking offline, but this idea of having to rob Peter to pay Paul. I had somebody tell me that in court yesterday. That they were like, yeah, one bad thing happened, and then things spiral out of control, and then next thing you know, you're just so far behind you can't get caught back up. And then you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and then the stress gets added to it because you're not being able to meet your needs basically.
so you talked about having somebody say that to you in court yesterday, and I think that's a good segue to the next question. So, what happens if somebody doesn't show up in court because they're being
Yeah,
sued by a debtor or by a creditor?
sure. So basically, what would happen is a default judgment would get entered. That's essentially just a finding by the court that the money's owed. And then the creditor is probably going to take collection actions such as garnishing your wages or your bank accounts. And that's what I'm talking about when things start to spiral out of control. If you don't communicate with your creditors, things just get worse. So instead of having a full paycheck, now you have 75% of a paycheck. And then the bills just compile and compile and compile.
Yeah. So, when you say default judgment and that being a ruling in the court, I guess the plain language of that is if you get sued and you don't show up, the person suing you wins. No questions asked. Doesn't matter if they were right or wrong. You didn't show up. They did. Therefore, you lose in the eyes of the court. Um, and I think it's important, especially with the fact that you and I both come from that side of this industry in the business world. And I think when we started this, what was it, 70% of all of the cases when we looked at the stats in of civil action regarding creditors suing debtors in the state of Virginia end in default judgment.
Yeah, it's a high number and it keeps going up outside of the landlord tenant because people show up for landlord tenant cases.
Yeah, no,
But
no,
otherwise, just general creditors, yeah, it's nobody shows up.
yeah, and I think that it's important, and I understand why they don't show up. Right? It's court's an intimidating thing. I got sued. That's scary. I don't want to go into a courthouse. I'll just put my head in the sand and hope
Hmm.
nothing happens. I don't think people understand. By not showing up, you lose, and you go to court 4 out of 5 days a week, right? The reality is that that is a side of the credit debtor relationship, right? That has to happen. People aren't going to pay the bills. The creditors are going to use the court system to try to collect on those bills. You're not looking to stand in front of the judge and get that default judgment or even and I'll say this as the guy who's not the lawyer, right? I know you as a lawyer, if in front of the judge you want to make the case and you want to win, but ultimately you would much rather have somebody communicate with you before court,
Hmm.
before it ever reaching that point. But even if it does get to that point, show up at the courthouse and meet with you so that you can stand in front of the judge and say, we've worked something out so that you can save that. I'm going to take it via garnishment. And now instead of you making either what your original monthly payment was or even a negotiated lower monthly payment, I'm going to take 25% of your paycheck and put you in a worse financial position than what you were. And it all could be
Hmm.
avoided just by communicating with you or the collector before it ever even made it to your department. right? And again, I think that's it, it's a missing component from an education standpoint that we don't teach people what may happen and how to avoid those things. And where having been on that side of it, we're not evil. We're right. We're not looking to beat people over the head. You entered into an agreement. Yes, we want to get paid as the lender or the holder of the credit grantor. But ultimately, we want to do it in a way that retains you as a consumer, right? There's no benefit to taking you to court, suing you, and taking 25% of your paycheck. There is a benefit to figuring out a solution. How can you pay me of your own accord? Because this may just be a short term problem. You get back on your feet, and I took care of you and did the right thing, and you felt good about it. You now come back to me as a customer again. I'd much rather solve the problem that way than leverage the courts and take it directly out of your paycheck. So, what else do we have? Gotta love the fact that all the questions were preloaded questions.
So I'm going to throw something out. I know we were talking about, one of the campaigns that we wanted to start was the Get Stacked campaign. Um, so do you want to go over maybe the importance of like $1,000 emergency savings fund and how people might get started on that?
Yeah, I think we touched on how to optimize savings, and I think when we talk about and just I guess give some context, right? The we you and I have had discussions wanting to run a program around if $600 is the current number that most Americans don't have, and I think we landed on the thousand because we looked at a study that said as a baseline that was the number that you should have, right? At
Yeah,
minimum $1,000 in your
bare
savings
minimum.
account.
Hmm.
So get stacked, $1,000 is stack. We're young and hip. Okay, you are. I'm old. Whatever. Uh, the 70-20-10 and talking about answering that question of how do you optimize the savings plan kind of leads into that, but it's important to recognize that that is unique to every individual, right? The optimal savings plan or financial plan is going to vary based on each person. I think the 10% starting point in the pay yourself commentary is the best way to get started toward that. Um, $1,000 in a savings account, again, you're $400 more than what the current number most Americans don't have. I would venture to say $1,000 in a general sense adds a layer of security as a number against what most emergency expenses for the average American might be. You're
Hmm.
usually talking a car repair or your refrigerator died and you're needing to replace a refrigerator. Those would be the things that I think are being referenced in emergency expense. And $1,000 is going to cover a lot of those
Yeah.
without that rob Peter to pay Paul scenario coming into play. Um, I think that get stacked ties into one of the things you and I wanted to do, which was offering up financial coaching services, not financial planning services, financial coaching services. Want to make sure that people heard that clearly if you're listening to this live or watching it on a replay. Uh, and financial coaching is just that. It's not. We're not going to sit down and tell you what to do with your money. We would help you figure out how to do. You figure out how to do things with your money, right? Does the 70-20-10 work for you, or is there a better number that works for you on how that gets distributed? It's more a support and encouragement, evaluate the situation and help guide you than it is telling you put your money in this or go invest in that. Um, and again, when we talk about that from a charity standpoint, when we looked at financial coaching, the would we see $300 to $400 per session
Right.
was kind
per
of
session. Yeah.
the running cost associated with a financial coach. So wanting to be able to take these things that there there is usually a pretty high cost associated with, and present that to this community either at a low or no cost option. So I know that we've had meetings with other charities. We've met with some of the local credit unions. We've had discussions with a bunch of different places. As you've been out, and you are probably, because of your job, you're in court across most of the cities in the Hampton Roads area. What's some of the feedback that you've gotten, if any, on what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of the local attorneys and the professionals, the judges, the legal aid folks as well, they're all interested in kind of our mission because a lot of the things that they see are the people that are coming to them kind of in, already behind the eight ball. So I think we fill a pretty good gap as far as helping out those individuals. Obviously, we're not going to be representing them as counsel or anything like that. But like you said, just trying to be a guideway, show them a way to get out of the current situation that they're in. Um, that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I think you're probably on the same wavelength on that.
Yep. Um, I do I do think it's funny that we started this when we talked about how did this come to be, that it started as a business idea, right? You and I having discussion of what could the proverbial side hustle be, and how that turns into a no, we'll just start a charity. Well, forget business. We'll just do it as a charity.
Yeah. We'll just
That'll
have
work
some
out
fun
for
with
us.
that.
But
And here we are,
that's
10
right. Here
o'clock
we,
on
and I guess I
Thursday.
do want to point out it is a charity, right? We are a 501c3. You know, we don't right now. It's you and I and a couple other people that do some stuff kind of on the in the background for us. Do want to shout out your dad, who is our biggest
Go
volunteer
Dad.
on getting stuff done for us. So Ted, if you are watching, you are appreciated, my man. But we live and die by generosity, right? It's your generosity in time and dollars out of your pocket at this point. It sounds kind of weird for me to say my own generosity, but it's time. I'm volunteering time that we're putting. I put money in, you put money in. Again, your dad has done a tremendous amount of stuff for us. There are people that are contributing, and it's only through generosity that we're able to make this happen. All of the things we're doing do have a cost associated with them, but and we're not pulling in any kind of revenue stream at this point. So just bear in mind that we are a charity. We live and die by donations and people's generosity, whether that's our own or others. I figured I'd put that out there. Can't say it enough. We are in that time of year.
Look, I mean, I think we've done good for being around for just a year or so with what we've accomplished, right? I mean, over 3,000 unique viewers to the website. A lot of them on the blog post learning about credit, learning about taxes, learning about savings and things like that. So I think the need is definitely there. It's just how do we scale?
Yeah, and especially for two guys that have no background in a nonprofit at all, right?
Yeah.
It's this is, I guess, pull the curtain back, and I've shared this with you. Whereas I walked into it going, I know an awful lot about business, and I could run a company. I can do that. I'll be all right. No. I'm trying to figure this out as we go, and figure I've learned that it's not a one-to-one relationship, right? A nonprofit functions completely different than a company does. Some of the structure is the same, and some of the things you have to consider, right? That when we're spending money on an advertisement on Facebook to promote an event like this, right? That's a one to one. The difference being us figuring out how we're going to pay for it versus a company having a budget for it and a revenue stream to support it. But some of the other stuff, the our product is a concept. It's a concept that was designed to be given away. It was never designed to generate an income. So being creative in that sense has been a unique challenge, I know, for me.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I think we have run through everything we had preloaded as questions. It does not look like there's been anything added in the comments.
Okay.
So anything you have in closing that you'd like to
I
offer
don't
up?
think so. Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to reach out to us, feel free. Um, we have our website. We have a contact me on there. Um, yeah, just let us know what you want to see, what you need help with, and that's what we're here for.
Yep. So as Austin said, we do. You can reach us via the website through the contact me form on the website, which again is financialfoundationsofvirginia.org. You can communicate with us directly through the Facebook page, which you are watching this on currently. We also have the Instagram associated with this Facebook page, which is FFOVA23. You can comment or reach out to us there. Uh, I don't know. We do have a LinkedIn profile. I don't know that that necessarily is a way that a whole lot of people that would be watching here would be communicating, but it is there. It is a line of communication. Um, but either, yeah, provide us feedback. What is it that you would like to see us add? What is something you would like to see a blog post on? Um, or just any kind of, if you have interest in volunteering, trying to offer some kind of support, we'd love to hear from you. So anyway, we want to hear from you, get feedback on what you thought of this. If you'd like to see us do more things like this, what is it you would like to see us do going forward? But we appreciate you watching. Austin, I appreciate you taking time out this evening to do this with me. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks.